Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Morgan and today I'm going to swatch out all of my favorite eyeshadow shades in every one of my palettes. I did this video about 3 years ago, so I'm going to see if anything changed, as well as obviously I have new palettes in my collection. So I'm just going to go through in my favorite eyeshadows, and then I will do my next video will be my least favorite eyeshadows. So stay tuned for that. But let's just jump into this video. So first I'm going to start off with the Lime Crime Venus 1. It looks like this, and I think I'm going to say that my least favorite shade is just something that I never use. It's this one called Moth. It's like a satin shade. It's like that, and I'll swatch it here. You can't even barely see it. So I rest my case. The next one is the Venus 3 by Lime Crime. And I'm gonna say that my least favorite shade in this is going to be this one down here. It's Beloved. I just never use it. And it looks like that. So nothing really wrong with it, I guess. It's just I don't ever use it. So I guess it's my least favorite shade. Next I have the Lime Crime Venus XL2. The palette looks like this. And I think my least favorite shade, the one that I want to pick as being the least favorite shade, like just starting off, is this one called Mystic. It just doesn't give you that much. Next, I have the Nomad Tokyo Harajuku palette. This shade just fell out. It's all over me. Oh my god. I was not expecting that to happen. Oh my god. Hopefully I saved enough of it. I kind of shoved it back in there, but that's not my least favorite shade, so it's kind of disappointing. My least favorite shade, I'm scared to hold this up now, is this one called Hanami. It's literally just like a pinky, almost skin color shade. The next palette is the Abh Oceanic palette, which looks like this, and these colors are all absolutely gorgeous, but honestly, if I'm going to have to pick one, I would pick this really dark, like, teal shade, just because these kind of shades, I never know what to do with them or how to use them. Looks like that, even though honestly, like, what's on my eyes right now basically almost is using that shade, but yeah, I would say that would be my least favorite. Then I have the Abh Paradise Fallen palette, which looks like this. And I think my least favorite shade, honestly, will probably have to be this blackout shade, just because I don't really use blacks that often. But that's actually a pretty nice black. So next I have the Urban Decay Born This Way palette, which is not my favorite palette to begin with, but I think my least favorite shade of this whole palette has to be Radio. Again, it's just a very deep, bluey, grainy shimmer, and even dark shimmers I'm kind of not as fond of. So next I have the Huda Beauty Rose Gold Remastered palette. It looks like this, and while my least favorite shade, I just realized that I'm filming my least favorite shades when I meant to film my favorite shades. I guess it doesn't matter, but I introduced this video wrong. My least favorite shade in this palette, although it's not my least favorite overall, is just with the theme of this palette, since it's so warm toned, it will be Suede, just because I don't feel like it fits in with any of the more warm toned shades in this palette. So again, nothing wrong with the shade itself, it just doesn't really fit in with the rest of the palette. And I have the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette. which looks like this. Again, nothing wrong with the actual shade itself, but this is just a shade that I won't reach for as much. It's called Empowered. It's a very dark shimmer. Next, I have the Abh Sultry Palette, which looks like this. And I think my least favorite shade in this palette, honestly, I'm going with my gut, and I just keep going back to Birch, even though, again, there's nothing wrong with the shade itself. I'm gonna go with my first initial thought. But again, nothing wrong with the shade itself. It's just the one that I look at and I don't want to use. Like, I barely use that one. Next, I have the Abh Subculture Palette, which looks like this. And again, I'm going to go with Axis. It's just like a dark teal shade, which I think I need to use more of those to kind of get out of my comfort zone. Then I have the Jackie Aina palette. These are all gorgeous, but I think I'm going to have to go with Sponsored just because it has that green shift to it and it's kind of out of place. But honestly, it means nothing. That's actually a gorgeous shade. I regret my decisions, but it's fine. I can't decide. Next, I have the Too Faced Gingerbread Spice palette. It looks like this, and I think out of these shades, my least favorite will be this one up here that says Ooh Burn. And that's a beautiful shade, but honestly, it's again just because I don't know what to pair it with in this palette. Like maybe that plum shade, but besides that, like I'm not quite sure, but I need to work with it more. Next, I have the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. This whole palette is beautiful, but I think my this one's really hard because these are all gorgeous shades, but I think I'm gonna have to pick this like crisp shade just because it's not as shimmery as I would want, because it kind of turns into more of a satin shade. But they're all gorgeous. I love that palette. I don't regret it for a second getting that one. Then I have the Too Faced Worn This Way Natural Nudes palette. And there's nothing wrong with this again, but I think my least favorite shade has to be Cocoa, and I'm just gonna pick that because I don't think I've ever worn it yet. But there's also nothing wrong with like a dark brown like that. Next, I have the Milk Cosmetics She's in Parties palette, and I already know this one's broken, so at least we won't have any scares. This shade literally is always moving. So I don't really reach for this palette in general, but I think my least favorite shade has to be this She's in Parties in the middle. Looks like that. And I think it's just because it doesn't fit in with it being like a cool toned mauve-y color story like I had hoped it would be. Because it's hard to hold this palette because of that shade that's broken. But you can see the cool tones and like the plummy tones. And that She's in Parties is kind of warm toned, and it basically ruins like the whole vibe for me. So next we have our Natasha Denona palettes. So this is the Circo Loco palette, which is reorganized. But I have to say that my least favorite shade in this palette, I don't know if you'll be surprised, but it's going to be this dark turquoise down here. Oh, I'm running out of room because I can go over here. Although that one seems like very good quality, so I'll have to experiment, but it's just a specific color, I think. Just makes me not want to use it. Then I have the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome palette, which is also reorganized, and I think my least favorite shade in this palette, I think I'm just gonna have to go with this one down here, just because it's just so boring. Nothing wrong with any of the shades necessarily. You can't even really see it. It's like a skin tone color. Then I have the Natasha Denona Glam palette, which is also reorganized. But these are the shades. Just out of it being boring, I'm gonna go with this. That one's a little bit more useful because it's more white and I can see it better, but again, not anything really special per se, just because it's like a white. Then this is my newest one actually. This is Natasha Denona Bronze palette. I haven't even used this one yet. So going off of like my first look at it, I'm saying that my least favorite shade is this one over here, which I'll swatch it. I've never swatched it, so who knows, but yeah, I'll stick with that. Just like a boring gold. I'll stick with that decision. They're expensive, and I don't want to say anything about like whether it's worth it or not necessarily, because it's kind of a personal decision. But I got a new job, so I treated myself for this one. Next, I have the Alter Ego Goddess palette. This is going to be a dupe of the Natasha Denona Gold palette. Looks like this, and I'm sure you know exactly which shade I'm going for. A dark teal shade. Looks like that. That one's not as good though. This is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Dollhouse palette. It looks like this, and then I don't know if you'll be able to tell by first glance, but I know exactly which shade I'm going for. Oh, I thought that was a black. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know. See, I thought this shade here was a dark bluish, like how all the other ones are, but it's literally black, so I might disagree with that. But honestly, that's probably the one that I would have avoided this whole time, so I'm glad that I swatched it because I wouldn't have probably ever used that. Next, I have the NYX Ultimate Utopia palette. It looks like this, and I think the shade that I basically would never use is also black, but definitely not as good as the other one. Next, I have the Give Me Glow Pastel Dreams palette. I literally like all these these shades, so I don't know how I'm supposed to pick one, but if I have to, I guess I'd pick this Daydream pastel pink just because I do have other pastel pinks in my collection. But at the same time, literally look how pretty that shade is. So I don't even really have like a least favorite shade in that palette. I love that palette. And this is the Give Me Glow, what is this? Bad Witch Club. This is actually what's on my eyes today. I tried to use some of the shades that kind of scare me, but I'm going to go with that dark teal shade yet again. But that's literally beautiful. So I probably should work with that more. I am making that a goal for myself to use more of these shades. Next, I have the e.l.f. I'm a Cotton-Headed Ninny Muggins palette. Looks like this, and I will say that my least favorite shade, I'm gonna go with this boring one right here. You can't even see it. It's like a skin tone color. And this palette is more of like a book, so there's 4 palettes within it. So I'm gonna start at the bottom, actually, make it easier. And my least favorite shade in this palette, probably gonna be this one, just because I don't think it's gonna show up as much. Kinda did. It's like a light pink. And then let's see the next. Okay, this one's more colorful, but this palette I'm already convinced it's gonna be this one here. And then this palette, it's gonna be this one up here. So there's the last couple there. And I have the BH Cosmetics Cotton Candy Sweet Shop palette. It looks like this, and my least favorite shade is gonna be this one here, Swirl. I just don't use it as much as the other ones. But I have the Cherry on top, which this one's gonna be this Black Cherry, actually, so I don't agree with this, but look how pretty that red is. Gorgeous. Then we have the Sweet Shop Orange Sorbet. And usually the one I don't use as much is this one down here, Double Scoop. But again, I need to because, oh my god. Look at that shade, that is so pretty. I'm literally running out of room. I have too many palettes. We're like halfway done. Then we have the BH Cosmetics Sugar Cookie palette, or Sugar Cone. Sugar Cookie. I'm gonna go with the boring shade over here. And I'm gonna stick that one right here. You barely see it. Okay, and we have this Makeup Revolution Marvelous Mattes palette. I'm gonna go with this one right here. This NYX Happy Birthday palette. I'm gonna, again, go with this shade. Nothing. I have the Pastel Pop palette by Menagerie Cosmetics. I think this white Saddleback is going to be my least favorite. On my hand there, not too much pigment. Then I have the BH Cosmetics Los Angeles palette. My least favorite shade. And this one is going to be this Dreamer shade. Pretty shade, but I just feel like, again, with the rest of the palette, I don't know what to use with it. We have the BH Cosmetics Smitten in Switzerland palette. And it's a pretty shade, but I'm not going to go with this Brisk shade just because, again, with the rest of the palette, I don't know what to do with it. But honestly, look how pretty that is. It's not technically my least favorite shade in the palette. I just don't know how to use it with the rest of the palette because it's only blue, but interesting. Then I have the Mimosa palette by BH. My least favorite shade in here is going to be the Champagne shade, which again is still pretty with that shimmer, but I like the vibrancy of the other shades more. The Essence Taupe It Up palette, which I really like this palette, but I'm going to go with this one just because it is pretty, but it's the darkest shade and I'm not as likely to reach for the darker shades, but it is gorgeous. I love this palette. Next, Ultimate Brights eyeshadow palette. And this is the shade that I'm going for. I'm going into ColourPop. I have the Disney Bambi collection. This is the Flower palette. And I'm going to go with Hibernating down here. It's a black with purple shimmer in it, if you can even see it. Then I have the Mandalorian palette, the Child. Looks like this, and I think I'm going to go with this one at the top. And my knuckles there. This is the Mandalorian palette. I'm gonna go with this shade up here. These are all beautiful and creamy, but picking that one. We have the Lilac You A Lot palette, and I think I'm gonna go with this Imagine That shade. These are like my favorite shades, but just going with the whole palette as a whole, I don't reach for that one as often. We have the Honey palette. And out of all of these, I'm going to pick the glitter shade in the middle. It's like that, so it's very nice. I just don't ever use pressed glitters. We have the Wild Child palette. And my least favorite shade in here is going to be this dark shimmery brown called Icon. Nothing bad about it, I just won't reach for those shades as often. And I have the In a Trance palette. And again, I'm going to reach for this glitter, which is beautiful, but same reasons as before. But it's over there, next to the yellow one. And I have the Flutterby palette. I'm gonna go with Float On, this really dark matte with shimmers in it. So it's that dark brown there. Then I have the ColourPop Fade Into Hue. I think I'm going to say that this blue pressed glitter here will be my least favorite shade. Right there. I just don't use pressed glitters. I already can't see like at all. I have contacts in. I can't see more than like 5 inches away from my face. So I'm not about to like blind myself, thank you. Next I have the Wet n Wild Nautical Nonsense palette. My least favorite shade in here. Honestly, quality wise, oh no, it's not quality wise, sorry, that one's actually good. Which one am I thinking of? I'm just gonna go with this pressed glitter for the same reasons as before. I'll stick it to the other ones. So right there. The e.l.f. New Classics. I'm gonna go with Downtown because it's a black with shimmer in it, which again, I don't know why these exist. It's right there. And the e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette. I think I'm gonna pick this one because this is the one I'm least likely to go for in this palette. I usually do a more grungy look. I'm gonna do that blue there, but that's a pretty nice blue. I have this Smoke and Mirror Soft Glam palette. And I'm going to go with this Risk Taker. It's a pressed glitter. I'm not gonna explain myself again. So right next to the other ones, that one's not even that good, even as a pressed glitter. We have the Midas Cosmetics Flower Bomb palette. I don't really like this palette at all, but I'm gonna go with Pollen over here. Sorry, it's that one. This palette has also broken on me before, but this is the Smoky Glow palette by Midas Cosmetics. And my least favorite shade in this one, I'm just gonna say is Cold Brew because it's boring. Nothing on the side of my hand there, but that's where it is. And then we have the Sample Beauty Prodigy palette. And we're gonna go with this dark teal shade right here. Right there. Then I have the Makeup Revolution Birds of Paradise palette. And my least favorite shade in here is going to be this blue glitter called Rio. Put up my wrist there. Have the Consolation Palette by Makeup Revolution. And my least favorite shade in here is going to be Night Sky. It's just kind of lackluster. Where can I even put this? Right there. It's just not, it's supposed to be a shimmer and it's really not that shimmery and it's just kind of bleh. Then we have the LA Girl Break Free palette. And my least favorite shade in this one is going to be this down here, which is still a good shade. It's just kind of not what I reach for in this palette. The Juvia's Place Nubian 3 Coral palette. My least favorite shade in here is going to be this one. Kind of nothing. We have the Freak by Juvia's Place. My least favorite in here is going to be this. It's like nothing there, really. I have the Deuce palette by Juvia's Place. I'm going through these fast because everything's the same because it's this shade. Then we have the Magic Mini by Juvia's Place. And the least favorite in here is going to be this Aja shade, which is like a black, basically. Okay, we made it through and I swatched all of my eyeshadow palettes for my least favorite shade. So you can see here, there's a lot of teals and dark colors, so I do need to use that more. So yeah, I really do need to reach for some of these shades. Some of them surprised me because I always picture them as being my least favorite shade and I've never actually used them. So I do need to use that more often. Besides that, this kind of makes sense to me. But I'm going to try to reach for them, and especially with the fall and winter coming up, I think it's going to be easier to use these darker shades. It'll be more of like what I think of, because in the summer I don't really think of that stuff as I'm wearing this look here. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you in my next one.